I want to welcome everybody to today's webinar, The Scariest Types of Data Breaches and the 5 Things that you can do to prevent them. My name is Adrian Phillips. I'm going to be your moderator today. And of course, we're sort of playing off this Halloween theme. And so I want to thank everybody for being here. I know everyone's super busy, and so we're hoping you're going to get a lot of value out of this webinar today. I'll start by introducing myself. I'm the Director of Product Marketing here at Citrix, and I have a diverse career dating all the way back to that dot boom era. I've also worked in multimedia journalism, owned a small business, but I've always stayed focused on helping companies of all sizes market innovative software products. Joining me today is Eric Kenny, and Eric is the Senior Product Marketing Manager for ShareFile. He's been working in technology for nearly 15 years and works closely with our partner community to understand the security challenges their customers are facing and the innovative ways they're using ShareFile to solve those challenges. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you, Adrian. Excited to be here, and happy early Halloween to you.
Well, thank you. One of the, if not the biggest trend impacting businesses across industries today, and that is data security. So data breaches are becoming almost commonplace, popping up at work, news headlines, and in everyday conversation around the dinner table. Data security is one of our areas of expertise at Citrix. So today we wanted to walk you through some of the basics of how data breaches happen and why they are becoming more important to businesses of all sizes. So we're going to spend a bulk of our time today going through that and breaking down the top 5 types of security breaches. And we're going to discuss some solutions that you can take to help your business prevent or recover from a data breach of your own. So we really want to hear from you today. So that isn't just us talking. We want to include your voice in the conversation. So please ask questions and share your comments by using chat or the Q&A panel at any time during this webinar. We'll also be answering questions live at the end. So we're recording this session today, and we're going to be sharing that recording out via email shortly after the conclusion of our webinar. So Eric, let's go ahead and get started.
Excellent. Thank you for that introduction, Adrian. And I'm really excited to share this information with everyone joining today. This is obviously a hot topic on breaches and what you can do to prevent them. So before we get into the 5 different types of data breaches, what I want to do first is really break down what a data breach is and what it means. And the way we like to do that is to borrow from Rich Muggle, who is an analyst and the CEO of Scariest, who came up with this concept of a data breach triangle. There is a link to his blog where he introduced this data breach triangle down at the bottom. I definitely recommend everybody go check that out. There's a lot of great information on that page. But he really did a great job of setting up what a data breach is by comparing it to a fire, right? So if you think about a fire, it needs 3 things to survive: fuel, heat, and oxygen. A data breach is very similar in that there are 3 sides to this data breach triangle, and they are data, exploit, and egress. So data is the information that a hacker is going in and trying to steal, or the information that somebody loses unintentionally, by losing a laptop or having it stolen. The exploit is that vulnerability that a hacker uses, or something that somebody does unintentionally that exposes that data and makes it vulnerable to a hack or to be lost. And then context of one of the most common types of data breaches, a stolen laptop. The data in that situation could be credit cards, social security numbers, customer list. It could be a company product roadmap. There are a lot of different types of valuable information that could live on a laptop. So that's the data in this, or the fuel in this particular type of data breach. The next is an exploit. So a vulnerability that leaves that data exposed. So in this instance, it could be I went to Starbucks and I left my laptop on the table when I went up to go order a coffee, right? That is vulnerable because now that laptop is unprotected and just sitting on this table. The egress in that situation is somebody who recognized that opportunity, who's being malicious, and they grab that laptop and leave the Starbucks with the laptop and all the information that's on it. So that's how a data breach happens. And there's obviously a multitude of different scenarios and different situations people can kind of exploit to really kind of dissect this data breach and make it happen in a big way for your company.
Yeah, so that's a great setup, I think, for the next slide. So, you know, data breaches are daily news. I mean, we say seamless. Talked about some examples. You know, what are some of these top examples that from just recent headlines?
Yeah, and I think these are all in the last month or two, or back April, so 6 months or so, of all the different types of data breaches that are happening. And this is a topic that it's really tough to keep up on because there are so many of them happening all the time. So if you look at that first one, Booz Allen Hamilton, this is something that was obviously unintentional, right? Putting 60,000 unsecured DoD files, which are obviously probably highly confidential. Some very sensitive information in those documents, and they just left them on an AWS server that was unprotected, right? So if we go back to the data breach triangle, the data is the information that lives on those files. The exploit or the vulnerability is leaving it unsecured, and the egress is somebody just going in, taking those files, and pulling them off, right? So this is a scenario where it was an unintentional breach, just some carelessness on somebody's part, but has really led to an embarrassing and really huge data breach on the part of Booz Allen Hamilton. Next is Equifax, a very similar situation where there was a patch that was supposed to be downloaded. That patch wasn't downloaded, and hackers were able to maliciously go in and pull all sorts of personal information. Everybody knows that the damage to Equifax's reputation since this data breach has been really significant. So, when we talk about things like the cost of a data breach, this is something that you really have to factor in. It's not just a fine that may happen to you. It could be something like damage to your reputation, customers that leave you because you get your name in the news as somebody that can't secure documents properly, the increased cost that it's going to take for you to get new customers. These are all kinds of costs that you have to factor in when you're figuring out how much a data breach costs. That obviously leads to the third one there, which is an instance where a stolen laptop led to a $2.5 million HIPAA fine. And that's obviously a really significant fine if for any company, but especially for small healthcare companies that are working with personal health information, right? So HIPAA fines can be really expensive. I think it can be up to $50,000 per record. So if you are working in a regulated industry like healthcare or finance, where you're holding really customer information, it's a little bit of math that you're going to have to do and think about all the different personal identifying information that you're holding for your customers and your employees, like social security numbers and credit card numbers, and multiply that by up to 50,000. The data breach. So it's something that can be really, really costly for companies, whether they're in regulated industries or just about any other industry as well.
Yeah, so a lot of the folks who are on this call are working in IT, and IT certainly knows that data breaches are a growing threat. So appreciate you, Eric, walking through some of those examples. And so we're looking at some data from Enterprise Strategy Group, and they ran some research in collaboration with Seclor, who's one of our partners. And they produced a report called Securing Information in the Age of External Collaboration. So in this report, users were asked about the likelihood of sensitive data having been lost or accessed inappropriately. And what I found interesting about this was how likely or how common each one of these scenarios already are. It's really moving beyond any kind of theoretical and into kind of daily life. So help us understand a little bit about some of these examples of the data breaches.
Yeah, and I think, if I'm assuming a lot of our audience here works in IT, and if you ever need a slide to go show your boss about why you need a raise, this is the slide that you should go show them. There's a couple of things that jump out at me on this slide right here. Of when it comes to a data breach and things you need to consider, things you need to plan for. So we've got 9 things on our list right here. And this is by no means a comprehensive list of all the different things that can go wrong when it comes to a data breach. So there's a lot of different things and let me see if I can actually share my screen with you. And how about that? All right, great. So there's here's that laundry list that you can take to your boss to show them why you need a raise for all the different things that you need to protect against. And you can see that there's quite a back and forth between really malicious intent when it comes to stealing files. So, stolen devices, files stolen by a hacker with stolen credentials, stolen by partners or contractors or customers. But there's also things where it's just employee carelessness, right? They, unintentionally or inadvertently emailed a file to a wrong person. So you not only need to protect against the malicious and people that are intentionally trying to do harm to your organization, you also need to protect against what hackers are trying to do and really accidentally exposing or any kind of documents and data that you have available. I think the other really critical thing to understand on this slide, or really amazing thing to understand on this slide, is that if you look at all of these different types of data breaches and you look at the very likely or somewhat likely columns and add them together, each one of them goes over 50%, right? Which means that each of these things, it is more likely than not that one of these things has happened to documents and data at your organization. The respondents felt this was more likely than not that it's happened at their organization. So there's a real threat with each one of these different types of breaches, and it is something that IT definitely needs to go and protect against in each case.
All right, so we're going to quickly move things forward here. So thanks for running through that. So one of the things that we see here is a recognition that 70% of employees are using personal online file sharing accounts without IT approval. And so one of the things that we talk about is of course shadow IT. If the product isn't easy to use, if it isn't easily adoptable, understood that it's within, available within the organization, we understand that the balance here between IT is really understanding security and productivity. So can you quickly walk us through sort of this list, and then we're going to quickly dive into the 5 different types of data breaches.
Yeah, I think the thing to take note of here is that, like you said, there's a balance between security and productivity. People want to be productive. They're being asked to do more with less. So it's not only just a matter of getting work done when you're in the office, but after you go and take care of the family, going and logging on in the evening, getting access to your files and doing whatever work you need to do to be productive. End users are requesting that. They need it to get their job done, but IT has a job to do as well, right? They need to secure all those different documents and data so they don't have one of those breaches, right? So here are some of the key things that IT should really be considering when they're looking at ways to secure their documents, because these are all really critically important and can really prevent those breaches, right? So first is ability to remotely revoke access to a previously shared file. So if I, Eric, share a file with Adrian, if Adrian should no longer see that because he left the company or no longer needs it for, because he changed roles, whatever the case may be, being able to go in and take access away from him so he can't get see that document. Next is the ability to control what those actions the internal use can take with the protected files. So in some instances, the document should be view only so that you see it on your screen and that's it, right? So IT should be able to really have a control so people can't download it, can't print it, can't edit it. It's something that's critically important to being able to protect your documents. Next is the ability to track files. So if I send it to Adrian and Adrian is the only one that should have access to that document, if he sends it off to somebody else, having the ability to run a report to see if Adrian did send it off to anyone else. The ability to control what actions external users can take. So same kind of instance, whether they should have view only, be able to print, be able to download, be able to edit with those protected files. Next is the ability to limit the device or IP address a recipient can take with a file. So in this type of instance, we only want you to have access to that document when you're on our corporate network within our 4 walls. So really kind of creating a whitelist of IP addresses where people can access specific documents. And then the ability to limit how long a recipient has access to that file. So it's the end of the month and I'm a salesperson and the customer has 2 days to sign this agreement before the month ends, and the deal that we're offering them on that file. So a potential customer can only access a document for a couple of days is another action that they should take as well.
All right, that's a great list. I'm hoping folks are taking notes on that. And as you were talking, Eric, I'm kind of having flashbacks to the first time I ever got to go to a haunted house. I don't know if you've ever been to one. There's that big long line, and you can hear that music, and the sounds. We're at that point now. So if I had that sort of haunted house organ music, it would be playing right now.
Very spooky.
And so let's go ahead and jump into the first type of data breach scenario here, and how Citrix can help you prevent that. So the first one, you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but this is a really scary scenario and also very real.
Yeah, this is probably the most common one, and I think that the one that people in IT need to think about the most and protect against the most is that lost or stolen device, right? So if you're in IT, I'm sure you've gotten the call. I left my phone in the back of an Uber. I left my laptop at Starbucks. It's gone. It has company information on it. What do I do, right? This is something that's really critically important, because if you think about it from somebody who's acting maliciously, stealing a laptop is way stealing your database. So this is just a scenario, again, that really need to plan for and really need to think about a lot. And then lastly, it's really important too, because we talked about before the fines that can be associated with in healthcare or finance, if you're in a regulated industry, can be like $50,000 per record. The Point of Honor Institute did their study where they found that the average cost of a breach per record is $148. So again, think about all of your employees' social security numbers, customer credit card numbers, and then multiply that times 148. That is the total risk and exposure that you have as a company when it comes to a document data breach.
Yeah, that's kind of scary. One of the examples that we found here when we put this together was a theft of a laptop computer contained information of nearly 1,400 patients. It was among 2 HIPAA breaches that led a Pennsylvania provider of remote heart monitoring to pay $2.5 million. So yeah, you talked earlier about that risk of exposure and multiplying, by the number of patient records. Man, that really is that's scary. That is certainly something that we want to avoid. So let's quickly talk about the best way to prevent this scenario.
Having the ability to manage that device and all the security features of whatever solution you're looking at, being able to really kind of have control of the device even after it's left the control of the person who originally owned it, right? So there's 3 really key things that you can do when it comes to device security. One is protecting data at rest. So not only when you are sharing a document with somebody, encrypting it, but then also when it's at rest, making sure that the document is encrypted as well. And then the second is to being able to lock the application as well, that holds any documents or data and that container, using that as a container and being able to lock that so people can't get access to documents in an unauthorized way. Next is a remote wipe. This is obviously the end all be all when it comes to having a lost device. But when somebody makes that call and says, I don't have my phone anymore, I can't find it, and they have really sensitive company information on it, having you as the IT administrator being able to do that remote wipe, and again, not having any data residue on the device, just being able to wipe everything from wherever you are, is going to go a long way in protecting that data. And then lastly, being able to disable external applications. So being able to restrict jailbroken devices, it opens it up to malware, and a lot of really bad things can happen with jailbroken devices. So having a solution that will not allow the application to be put onto it or documents to be stored on a device that is jailbroken is a really key feature. And then lastly, disable open-in. So it doesn't matter how great your security is or how great your solution is. If I send you a Word document through the application, and instead of opening the application, I just do open in Word that I have saved in my phone, you've really bypassed everything, and your solution isn't doing what you thought it was going to be doing. So having the ability to disable that feature, not being able, not allowing your end users to open documents in Word, in Excel, in PowerPoint, really having them limited to the application will also go a long way to protect yourself as well.
Yeah, that sounds good. And we talked a little bit earlier about, the concern about unsanctioned applications and file sharing solutions. And of course, when IT is really able to manage that solution and provide an easy to use solution for the whole organization, of course, you're going to want to use some type of single sign-on Active Directory type scenario. So of course, when an employee leaves in that horrible scenario where that device is lost, using that single sign-on, you can immediately is certainly something that everyone on this call should be looking for. All right, the next and scary scenario is organ music, the untracked traveling file. So what is this scenario? Set this one up and why this one is so scary.
Yeah, so despite our best efforts, we try to keep all of our information walled within the office and secured the best we can. But the reality is that's just not how work happens anymore, right? You need to collaborate with other folks, whether they're in different offices than you are, but actually more frequently, you need to collaborate with people that are off your network. So customers, with partners, with vendors that use different systems, that use a different network. You need to be able to share documents with them. You need to be able to collaborate with them on documents. So you really need a solution that enables security and maintains security on those documents when they do leave your four walls and they do go to that customer or partner or vendor, right? So something to think about is, you send a really sensitive piece of information over to a partner, and they go and they screenshot that document, right? So they've now got a picture of really sensitive information on their phone. There is no way for you to recover that information. It's that they work with, to a competitor, to the media, whoever it may be, that document, again, has lost your control. And that really rolls into number 3 of giving unauthorized access to a file. So what it really comes down to is making sure that a document only ends up in the hands of its intended recipient, and they only have the ability to do with that document what you're prescribing, whether it's view, edit, download, or print.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I've heard a lot of customers just say, you know what, that's why I'm just going to stick with paper, or I'm going to stick with a CD-ROM, right? Because that's secure. But if you're using a CD-ROM or you're using paper, you're not going to be able to take advantage of the best way to prevent this scenario. If you could walk us through IRM, what does that stand for?
Yeah, IRM is information rights management, and it's what we classify as follow the file security. So there's 3 really key parts of information rights management that makes it all work. So those 3 things are encryption, authorization, and authentication. So encryption meaning, the document is encrypted when you send it over to the recipient. Authentication meaning that, when they go and try to access the document, verifying who they are, and then authorization, do they have the ability? Have we given them permission to get sent to somebody who we can't authenticate or authorize? They don't have the ability to see that document. So this is a great way to make sure that the integrity of the document is maintained, and that only the person that you want to see the document can see it, and that they can only do with it what you intended, right? So you can limit the ability to view, print, edit, copy, or paste. We can also do things like watermark documents, which prevents them from taking screenshots, because they take the screenshot, their names plaster all over it. So information rights management is a great way for companies to protect documents even after they've left the 4 walls of their organization.
All right, that's a really, really cool feature, and one of the ones that I just think really is ultimately a game changer in terms of providing corporate governance. All right, so the third scenario is the employee who accidentally sends or intentionally steals some sensitive files. So go ahead and set this one up for us.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about hardware previously, so whether it be a phone or a laptop, and now it even kind of drills down further to that, where people can be malicious or careless down at the file level. So some ways are going to steal proprietary corporate data when they quit or get fired. Obviously, you want to protect against that because they can take your most sensitive information, whether it's customer lists, product roadmaps, or even things like employee social security numbers with the intent of selling them on the dark web. All things that can get you in really serious trouble. There's also the instances where those malicious insiders are the next point. Malicious insiders are the least frequent, but they are the most costly, right? So those accidental ones where somebody clicks on a phishing link and somebody gets access to all of your corporate documents, those happen the most frequently, but those are actually the least costly. The ones where people are actually breaking into your system are actually the most costly, just because it takes a really long time for people to detect when somebody has actually entered their system. It can take about 45 days on average for people to realize hackers have entered, and they can obviously do a lot of damage over the course of that month and a half. And then lastly, only 15% of companies are actually auditing what is happening with the documents that they have within the organization. So what is happening with files? Who's downloading them? Who are they sending them to? Should that person have access to that document? Only a small handful of companies are really understand what's happening with them through advanced reporting features.
So I think that's a great setup. So I think the best solution here really just lies, once again, in having the right technology in place, automation. Walk us through this technology called DLP and how it can help with this problem setup.
There's a lot of really great vendors out there that do data loss prevention. And what happens with the data loss prevention system is that you can set up policies and rules to scan documents before they are sent out to ensure that they don't have that sensitive information that needs to be protected. So for example, if I take that list, an Excel spreadsheet of credit card numbers of all of our customers, and try to send it to myself because I know I'm leaving the company and I know a place to sell them. When I try to email those out, to myself, the DLP system will actually scan that file and see if there's anything that looks like credit card numbers in it, and that send will fail once it recognizes that there are credit card numbers in there, right? So a great thing about a file solution, file sharing solution that you should really be looking at is, does your DLP system integrate with your file sharing system? Because if it doesn't, your file sharing system then obviously becomes a way to work around that DLP and get that information.
All right, that's great. And so now I don't know why I've got this whole haunted house analogy in my head, but now we're pretty deep inside the house, and you just passed one of the last exit signs. You are in it, you are committed, and this is one of the scariest places to be, and that is when you have a violation of an industry compliant rule. So now not only is it damaging to your business, but you've also upped the ante yet again. And walk us through why this is so important, compliance.
Yeah, so this is obviously most impactful for those that are in those regulated industries like a healthcare or a finance. If you are on the wrong side of compliance, you're on the wrong side of the law, you're going to be subject to fines, you're going to be in the news as somebody that exposed patient health information or financial information of your customers. Obviously not something where you want to be a part of or a situation that you want to be in. I think it's also really important here too for people in technology that are in these industries to understand that compliance does not equal security. Just because you are compliant with HIPAA does not necessarily mean that your IT infrastructure is the most secure. All it means is that you have the security framework. You met the minimum. They are going to a good guideline for organizations to take in protecting patient health information, but they are not the end-all be-all. Organizations who plan on going a few steps beyond what is the requirement of HIPAA or FINRA to really make sure that their data is protected so they don't end up on the wrong side of a data breach.
Yeah, that does sound scary. So quickly walk us through, what are some of the ways to prevent a breach of this scenario?
I think if you are in one of these regulated industries, the most important thing to do when you're evaluating vendors is really look at their website and talk to whoever your account rep might be and ask about if they are compliant with a particular if their solution is compliant with FINRA or HIPAA or whatever you may be subject to. You want to look at their website and see if they are linking to those third-party sites. There's a HIPAA website that links all the organizations that are compliant, all the solutions that are compliant with their laws, make sure that they are listed on that, because that's not just something that you want to find out after the fact, something that you thought was HIPAA compliant because you were told it was. This is definitely something you want to take a couple extra steps on your own. Meet the compliance requirements for your industry.
All right, that's great. And so the last and final scary scenario, you've done all your hard work, you've researched the compliance solutions, you've put all of your security policies in place, you've trained everybody in your organization of how to keep files off the web and stop attaching the email and stop using all of these unsecured practices. But then the employees go out and bypass the company approved apps and processes and use something else. So walk us through why this is such a scary setup.
Yeah, I think there's two things for everyone to consider here. The first is, kind of goes back to what I was talking about before, where people are being asked to do more with less, right? So they spend their time at the office working all day, but they also have a life outside of work. They need to go home and get the kids, make dinner, do all these things to make life happen. And then once the kids go to bed, then they, going to log back on and finish up what they need to for the day. They are looking for tools to remain productive even when they are not outside the office. So if IT doesn't give them the tools that they need to be productive when they're home or traveling or their own. So if you don't give somebody a file sharing solution, they're going to go out and find one on their own, right? And then, of course, if I download a customer list or the product roadmap to my personal laptop so that I can have access to it and get work done at a time that's convenient for me, IT has no way to get that information back if I were to lose my device, leave the company, all those scenarios that we talked about earlier. The other thing to consider here when it comes to shadow IT is the usability of products. So, there's, we all know about the consumerization of IT, app stores, and the experience that people have come to expect when it comes to software and applications now. They expect something that is really easy to use. And if IT gives them something that is really complicated and it's hard to figure out, they don't know how to use it, they don't know how to train, they never train them on how to use it, they're going to go out and find a solution that is easy for them to use and something that's easy for them to understand. So I think those are the two sides of the coin in this instance when it comes to shadow IT.
All right, so the best way to prevent this scenario, why do I feel like there's a big setup coming?
You are no fool, Adrian. This scenario is just find a secure tool that's easy for them to use. The thing about this too in that scenario is that people don't want to use shadow IT in most instances. They don't want to be outside of their company's rules. They want to have a solution that they can use that is simple to use within the company's rules and helps them stay productive. So being able to just integrate with what they do on a daily basis, have it be a cloud-based application so they can access it anywhere, have it be something that is a familiar interface, something that's going to be really easy for them to learn, and you're going to eliminate shadow IT really drastically.
All right, look at that. We've got the solution. So let's tie it all together now as we sort of start to, you can start to see the light off towards the back of that haunted house now. Man, I don't know why I have to keep going back to that example, but hopefully you're, eating some tasty popcorn and some Sour Patch Kids as we go through this. So the answer is that secure digital workspace that Citrix provides. It's that balance of, managing risk and also enabling productivity and ease of use. Tie us all together here and help us understand how you can really address all of these scenarios using the digital workspace.
Yeah, so you obviously get the digital workspace through Citrix. So the secure delivery of applications obviously comes through Zen App, Zen Desktop, Zen Mobile. NetScaler obviously adds a really critical piece of infrastructure and a piece of security for any organization when it comes to securing your network, but then also securing your applications. And then ShareFile is obviously the really key piece of that when it comes to data. We talked a lot about the different things, the types of breaches and the things that you can do to go ahead and protect all the documents and data within your organization. And Adrian, I've got a huge surprise for you.
What do you have?
You'll never believe it, but ShareFile does a lot of the things, if not all the things that we talked about today, to help secure the digital workspace. So, when you're considering a solution and you consider something like ShareFile to help secure the documents and data in your organization so you don't have that breach, consider things like ShareFile is going to do things like increase workforce efficiency. So when people do get home at night and they are ready to do some work, that once the kids are in bed, we're going to give them the ability to access their documents no matter where they are in a really secure way. We're going to help them collaborate across boundaries. So we talked about before, collaboration doesn't happen with just the people that are different offices within your organization, but it also happens with vendors and partners and customers who may be on a different side of the world. And collaboration with those people is really difficult. File is set up in a way to make that collaboration really easy. Next is cloud enabling existing data. So a lot of companies still have legacy FTP servers, file servers that really weren't built for the mobile and cloud era. And that's really what is creating a lot of these security concerns, is that those files are stuck on that legacy infrastructure, and they're looking for ways to get access to them no matter where they are, no matter what device you're using. So ShareFile is a phenomenal way to go ahead and cloud enable all that existing data within your organization. Next is flexible integrations. We know not everybody is ready for the cloud, so we want to give you the flexibility to store your documents and data wherever is comfortable for you. So if you want to use a Citrix managed cloud storage zone, you're welcome to do that. If you built out your own data center, you can store your documents there. If you want to take a hybrid approach as you generally make your transition to the cloud, you have the option to do that as well. And then lastly, tying it all together, protecting your data. ShareFile's need to keep your documents and data secure without that backlash from your users because they don't have access to the documents they need when they need them.
Yeah, that looks great. And so thank you so much for walking us through that, Eric. At this point, we want to open it up for Q&A. And then I have a couple questions that have already come in, and just sort of while we're riding that protect your data bandwagon here, so we always talk about how, a ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And so, yeah, these are great. But what if in the, horrible chance that, an employee does click on something and some of your files do end up getting encrypted, AKA ransomware? Does ShareFile have anything in place to help you recover from such a scenario?
Yeah, that's a great question. File versioning is something that's critically important as well, and something that exists within ShareFile. So if you do have that incident where somebody does click on that phishing link and your company gets infected with malware, you're actually able to go back in time and find a version of the file that is not infected, so you don't lose every document within your organization. You're going to be able to go back and get the stuff that's critically important to you to keep running your business.
Yeah, that's amazing. If you didn't have ShareFile, to have all those files, backed up, and to have that business continuity and to be able to recover from it, that's where so much of the cost really comes from any type of data breach, in addition to fines, but just the sheer amount of time it takes for you to recover. And ShareFile does make that so easy to bounce back. So another question that's come in here is, in addition to everything that you've talked about from the technical side, and this has been a great overview, so thank you, Eric, but what else can we do, perhaps maybe from the business perspective or in terms of some of our operations?
I think it's really important is to, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. And I think part of preparing for the worst is making sure that you have an incident response plan before the breach happens. So this is something that should be documented and created by IT, and then socialized with the organization at large about what is going to happen if there is a data breach, so people know what to expect if it does happen. So again, you don't want to tell people that it is going to happen and they should be concerned, but I think it will give people peace of mind to know that this is something that you're thinking about, something that you're taking measures to protect against, and that this is going to be the plan, and this is what we're going to do if something were to happen.
Okay, great, thanks. So the next or one that offers some storage for my employees. So why would I use ShareFile? So how does ShareFile really extend the value of some of these online collaboration tools, maybe such as G Suite or Office 365?
Yeah, we know that there's a lot of companies that are using them. They've become really pervasive. A lot of people are using those applications to really kind of power their whole organization. So ShareFile is built in a way that's meant to be complementary and to add value to those subscriptions that you already have, as opposed to being something where we say you should use either or. We think there's value in using both of them. So when you think about things like connecting to other data sources, right? So ShareFile gives you the ability to connect to OneDrive for Business, to SharePoint, to network shares, to your Exchange folders. So ShareFile really becomes that single pane of glass into all the documents and data within the organization. So I can pull out my phone, open up my ShareFile app, and get a document that is in SharePoint. So if I'm out and I need to share this document with Adrian, it's in SharePoint, a couple of clicks, I'm able to go and grab it and share it with him really easily. We also have things like workflows. So things as simple as feedback. People are sharing files. So being able to go in and kick off a workflow from ShareFile and have it all centralized and managed in one place, as opposed to having a reply all apocalypse and getting hundreds of emails in your inbox about a specific document that everybody's collaborating on. It's a great way to again streamline all that and have it all centralized to make it life a lot easier for everyone. And then the last thing I would say too is e-signatures. So ShareFile has an e-signature solution integrated right within our offering, which really can make life a lot easier, help digitize and automate a lot of processes that are associated with paper and other business processes as well.
Yeah, that sounds great. And so the other question that came in was around, if I am currently a XenApp or Zen desktop user, how does ShareFile work within that virtual environment, and particularly help streamline the different file servers that I have to connect?
Yeah, so we have a great tool, something that I use every day, called Drive Mapper. And what Drive Mapper is going to do is essentially mount ShareFile as a letter drive within your XenApp or Zen desktop. So in our instance, and I'm actually able to access all ShareFile and all of my different folders within ShareFile right from Drive Mapper. So that makes life really easy for me, just because it didn't change any behavior. But the great thing about that too is that it goes back to the connector story that we were just talking about, is that I'm actually able, because I've connected ShareFile to those other different data repositories, I'm able to access them from that S drive as well. So again, it turns ShareFile into that single pane of glass. It's optimized to work within a virtual environment because of all the work we've done with our sync client to make it work really quickly and efficiently without taking up a bunch of bandwidth on your virtual network. It's a great tool for all of our XenApp and Zen desktop customers to use.
Yeah, that sounds good. And one of the things that you mentioned there that comes up a lot with customers is, if they might be using a different solution that might work in Windows 10 or might work in another environment, but may not necessarily work in a Windows Server environment or a Windows 7 environment, or certainly not a virtual environment. So, there was a question about how do I help sell this to the finance department? And I think it's really around that flexibility of being able to provide everybody in the organization access, regardless of operating system, regardless of physical or virtual environment. There was another question around the role in, are you able to speak to ShareFile versus FTP? Because we certainly hear of a lot of scenarios where FTP really gets, kind of end of life after being able to use ShareFile.
As a reformed FTP user, I can definitely say that ShareFile is a much simpler solution to use. I'm not super technical, and I found, I'd have to exchange files with an agency that we work with, and they prefer to use an FTP site to exchange those files. It was really difficult. The exchanges didn't work all the time. I didn't get notified when new documents were in the FTP site. It was just a really bulky, not user-friendly experience, and also not the most secure experience. People can get access to those FTP sites pretty easily. So it's just not a great solution on a couple of different fronts. And I think too, I don't think that I'm the only one that feels that way. So I think when people feel that way, they have to use this FTP server. That goes back to what we were talking about before, where they start using shadow IT and they look for solutions on their own that are a little bit easier to use. So when I started using ShareFile, it was a real eye-opener, just because you see it doesn't have to be that way. And I think the tool is the #1 feature on ShareFile that our customers use, just because it is so simple. I have my Outlook plugin set in, so anytime a file over 2 megs gets attached to an email, it automatically gets converted to a ShareFile. That obviously facilitates secure file sharing and is way easier to use than that FTP side. And you don't have to be a customer too, right? So as a ShareFile user, I can actually set up a portal to, so other people can drop files in as well. Much easier than an FTP site.
All right. Well, that sounds great. Hey, listen, we are out of time. I want to thank everybody for hanging with us. Hopefully what you've seen here is some ways that Citrix can really fit into your security vision and the way that you're providing tools and solutions to your organization. You have with Citrix, Citrix has an industry-leading content collaboration solution in ShareFile, according to Gartner and other analysts. And so, you have this at your disposal. So we want to encourage you to follow up on that and have conversations about how you can integrate this into your organization and start taking advantage of all the great features of this product. So after the webinar, you're going to get a copy of the webinars. Eric, hey, thank you so much for all the expertise and guiding us through this today.
Thanks for having me, Adrian. It was great to be here.
Yep, and thank you to all of you that attended. We really appreciate it. Have a great rest of the month. And Cybersecurity Month, I hope it's not going to be scary at all. All right, bye now. Signing off.